Halloween
forever.
Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker.
Shut up. Shut the
Thank
fuck
you
up.
for that one, guys. Welcome to another Minisode of Halloween is Forever. I'm Brian.
I'm Meg.
I'm Steve.
Do you know where that is? You don't even know where that quote's from?
What is that from? Like, it's something
That
I've heard.
creepy quote.
Sounds like a Simpsons thing for some reason, but
Well, because I did the little, that is spoken by the great Gene Wilder in the family favorite Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
oh, it is.
Is
but
he
it
just
is-
like the whitewashed Candyman? Is that what we're going to go with?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you guys know this, but Willy Wonka is in the Candyman cinematic universe. I mean, he is a Candyman
It's a
throughout
universe
history.
now.
Yeah. Well, actually, interestingly enough, apparently it is, which is I was pretty excited to see in this movie. But we'll get into it. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, boys and girls. We are here for another mini-sode, and we've already kind of hinted at it, and we dropped a couple hints there on the social medias, that we're going to be talking about the brand new 2021 Candyman, which just came out on Thursday, right? Mm-hmm. I saw it yesterday afternoon. Been about 24 hours since I saw it. We did not see it together. We saw it on our own time. We had a busy weekend, but when did you guys end up? Meg, you saw it on opening night, didn't you?
I saw it Friday. Yeah.
Oh, you saw it on Friday.
I came down to the wire. Like, I was working it into my weekend, and I was like, I'm going to buy this 5 p.m. ticket and have to drive from Slippery Rock down to Pittsburgh and make it in time. And
Yeah.
I fucking made it.
Yeah,
a mini cannonball run for Meg's viewing.
It really was. I love inserting the drama. I'm going to book a ticket at a movie theater that's 80 miles away for some reason. They have movie theaters in Butler County, Meg. You know that, right?
I was staying in Pittsburgh. Okay, come on, give me a break.
Okay, gotcha. Steve, did you see it yesterday?
I saw it Saturday afternoon. And
yeah, me too.
Just a quick PSA to people. I had one of the worst theater experiences.
Oh, no.
And there was only 5 people in there. So one person really went out of their way to be a fucking, it's just a complete uncouth animal.
Wait, was it it was a movie goer that was the asshole?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No.
Because I was going to tote the place I went.
Yeah. No, the movie I enjoyed, the theater was fine. It was a Cinemark, big enough, everybody. But literally, there's only 5 of us in the theater at a noon 30 showing. Mm-hmm. This guy comes in and is eating snacks like an animal, like the Tasmanian devil, to the point that
he's like Meg trying to open a bag of chips with her elbows.
Worse. Because Meg doesn't get winded and wheeze.
Get winded eating chips.
This dude was getting winded eating popcorns and Junior Mints and drinking soda.
Oh no!
And then with like a half hour left in the movie, he fell asleep and started wet snoring.
Man, you are painting a portrait right now of this guy.
I was gonna assume. I assumed you were gonna say like, no, he was looking at his phone, he was talking, he was doing that stuff. No, he was just having a series of episodes. It sounds like.
Yeah, he was just being an animal throughout the entire thing.
Wow. And he was by himself?
Yeah, he was by himself. There was only 5 of us. It was me, this Yinzer, and with a mustache and a Steelers shirt, an older lady, and a couple.
Wow.
And that was it. And out of 5 people, he ruined it for most of us.
You're painting such a word picture for me.
Yeah.
I was like, how did you know he was a Yinzer? It's like one of my first questions.
Because he was wearing an Eric Pegram jersey.
Yeah, because he was sitting behind me, and I turned around, and he had the Pittsburgh Midwest dad mustache and a Steelers shirt. And I was
Did
like,
you just say a nap a lot?
He came to the theater to take a nap. He didn't care what movie he saw.
Exactly.
He just he walked up to the ticket booth and said, which is the emptiest? Because I'm going to snooze.
Right. Which is also why he probably powered down his snacks as fast as possible. You know, just driving snacks into his face, gets winded. He caused a coughing jag in himself. He was eating so fast. So he's on top of snoring and eating heavy. He's coughing.
Dying over here.
Just
I'm
insane. Insane.
I'm a heavy eater.
Yeah. And then on top of it all, the lights come up, and around his chair is just a ring of popcorn and an empty Junior Mint box.
Oh, just to being a slob.
Yeah, just being a slob. Had no attempt at not being an asshole. Just came
Disgusting.
in to like wreck up the place and ruin people's day.
I'm sorry I'm finding so much joy in your pain right now, but this is fucking hilarious.
Oh, I've been to this. I've been to a theater when I've been in a movie where somebody was snoring, for sure.
It's hilarious because it's just like, there's 5 of us. You know, you think on average. Like I've been
What's
the last
the
time
chances?
the last time I was in the theater was Avengers Endgame. It was completely packed. And it was fine. Like, you know, it's whatever.
Right.
But like when you go in and there's only 5 of you and one of them is the Tasmanian devil with narcolepsy, you gotta like, what the hell?
Well, you know what, too? It's like when there's only that few people in there, if it's a packed house, you're hearing all types of stuff, but it's just part of the background noise.
Right.
When there's only 5 people, you hear exactly where it's coming from, too.
Yeah.
Which is miserable. And I've been there. I've been in a theater with someone snoring before, too. That's unpleasant. I had a similar experience in that it was like 2:20 showtime matinee on Saturday afternoon. There was only maybe 8 people in there, but did not have any Tasmanian devils, fortunately, for me. But
yeah, I don't know if it's like people are just not going back to movies, but I had a similar experience, which just want to shout out Hollywood Theater in Dormont, because I mean,
it's a great.
It's such a good, like, I walked out and she looked like she was the manager, and she was just like, "What'd you think of it?" And I was just like, "Whoa, why are you talking? That's amazing." Like, you're like actually asking me about my experience, but like,
there's nothing I love more than when movie theater employees are psyched about the movies.
Yeah.
Like, I just love that. I love that.
But that's what you get at Hollywood, though, because like they actually love movies there. Like,
yeah. And
I wish I lived closer to that place.
It's super dope. It was my first time there, but I didn't realize they only had the one theater, which I thought was a really cool thing about it, because they have to like choose very selective movies. But like I said, I was running down to the wire, showed up, like walked in. I'm like, already had prepaid for my ticket. And then I was just like, okay, I need small popcorn, all the butter you can put on there. Went and like used the bathroom, and I came back.
You're like, you're going to need to get some assistance. We got to do this quick. I got to get in this fucking theater.
Which I also want to point out, I had caught this video somewhere on the social medias of this person who put straws in their popcorn so that they can then filter butter to the bottom.
Down to the bottom?
I'm like, that's an ingenuity. Next level stuff.
Yeah, I'm on board for that level of ingenuity. Snack ingenuity. You know what would be even better? If they replaced the straws with red vines and actually put the butter down and they just spit beer all over herself.
Oh my God.
I'm just really upset that you just said that.
Oh, make the straws edible. That's what I'm here to add to the party.
But you want buttery red vines?
Yeah.
Like,
you're fucking A right, Meg. I went buttery red. Yes. I actually, speaking of buttery red vines, I actually grabbed some snacks. I think I posted something about it on the Instagram page. I grabbed some spooky snacks. I feel bad sneaking snacks in the theater because I know it's a big part of, you know, their revenue stream and everything. But this is a big multiplex. I mean, fuck them. But also, I did buy, a $5.50 large Diet Pepsi. So, you know, they got my money. But in any case, I brought in spooky Junior Mints, because Junior Mints are the once and future snack for movies, along with Raisinets in my mind. So I got that.
What is the spooky? Wait, pause. What is the spooky version of a Junior Mint? I haven't seen these yet.
The inside, the white peppermint cream on the inside is just orange. It tastes exactly the same. In fact, I was in a dark theater, so I couldn't even tell the difference. Yeah, I couldn't even tell the difference. But I felt good about buying them at the Giant Eagle. And then I also had I couldn't resist candy corn flavored red vines.
What?
But they did not taste even remotely like candy corn. They actually had a weird, almost like caramely type of flavor to them. They were fucking delicious.
Oh, okay.
They were really
like,
good.
Terrible.
No, they were great. And Kate even was like, they almost taste like a caramel apple. Like, I feel like they're mislabeled because they don't taste anything. Like, they really and truly taste absolutely nothing like candy corn. But in a very good way. So if you get a chance, try them out.
That's bullshit. You know why? Because it's going to trick people into thinking candy corn tastes good.
You know what? It was weird because if I was expecting candy corn, if I was like craving candy corn, I would have been disappointed. But who eats candy corn in movie theater? I mean, I would, I guess, if they sold it there, but because I love it. But
seasonally, they totally should. I'm on board for this.
But when I'm eating red vines, I'm getting them for the texture. I'm not getting them for the unique flavor nuance of a red vine. Like they're fucking plastic, cherry flavored plastic. It's just, if
I feel like that's Limp Bizkit's new album title.
Cherry flavored plastic, and the hot dog flavored water, chocolate starfish and the grape or in the candy corn red vines. But it was blast. I'll tell you what, and we'll get into it in a second. But man, it felt really good to get back in the theater. First time I've been in theater. I think you guys same, right? In probably a year, 18 months.
Yeah, it's probably even longer for me on that one. But yeah,
and it was. I'd seen a bunch of movies at the drive-in and stuff in the last couple of years, but it had been nearly 18 months since I've been in the theater, and this movie, Candyman especially, I'm really glad that I went and saw it in the theaters, because the cinematography, the sound design, everything like really came through in a big way, and I just walked out of that place on cloud nine, which was it was just so much fun, and it was just by myself, it just was really fun to be back in the theater. But before we get into the actual movie itself, let's talk about some beers. Anybody got beers?
Yeah, dude. So like I said, I was staying in Pittsburgh all weekend, so I was dealing with my friend's stash, and I'm really excited. She had some Burgers Brewing Deutschtown Pils.
I cranked through a whole bunch of that.
Yeah, it's so fucking good. I love those guys over there.
They're the closest brewery to my house.
Yeah.
So and they obviously have great food. They have great burgers and stuff there as well.
Shout out that
and great fried chicken. Yeah, that Korean fried chicken, so fucking good. When you get an entire plate of Korean fried chicken as an appetizer, that's me every time I go there. And Neil's a great dude, and he's a really good brewer and stuff too.
Yeah.
And so that they're in Shoebrew because they're like right near me. I spend a lot of time there and eat there quite often. So. I've got we were talking before we started recording. My cousin's in town. He and his girlfriend, they live in Wisconsin, where I used to live, and I fell in love with New Glarus Brewing Company when I was up there. And anybody who's lived in Wisconsin, spent a significant amount of time in Wisconsin, is familiar with New Glarus. Spotted Cows, obviously, they're big kind of flagship. But they make some world-class. I mean, all their beers, in my mind, are virtually without exception, absolutely world class. And I am currently drinking a very famous beer from them called Raspberry Tart. That and kind of Wisconsin Belgian Red are a couple of, in my mind, some of the world's greatest fruit beers. They're just goddamn fantastic. It is like drinking, but in a balanced way, not in a gloop glop way. It is like drinking just the essence of fresh, tart raspberries. It's such a gorgeous beer. And look at the color on it. Like, Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's pretty.
Well, I'm not representing this very well, but it is like this deep crimson.
Yeah, I feel like they referenced New Glarus a lot when I was going through the American Brewers Guild course, and it gave me like an entire different perspective on them as a company and like how much they give a shit about like what ingredients they're putting in. And they just don't, I also have this appreciation that they're like, we know you all want us.
Yeah, they literally sell it only in Wisconsin. They're like one of the top, I forget how many, they're certainly in the top 20 craft breweries in the country.
Yeah.
And they literally sell in one state.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. Dan Carey, I got to do I went to a week-long malting seminar up in Chilton. I feel like I'm having deja vu, like maybe I've talked about this before. If I have, forgive me. But up in Chilton, Wisconsin at Breese, and the group that I was in, and when we went and toured the malt house and all that sort of thing, and he was also one of the proctors for the week, was Dan Carey. And that awesome. Guy is just a walking brewing technology, brewing science encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And people especially in the Midwest and stuff, just he is a forefather of craft beer and modern brewing technology and brewing science in the United States. Just like there isn't anything this guy doesn't know about brewing. It's pretty impressive. And also, like, I don't want to speculate about the guy's age, but I'm pretty sure he could throw me over his shoulder and climb up a mountain. Like I'm gonna guess he's like 60 years old, and he would just throw me over his shoulder like a sack of grain and climb up a mountain. He does like ice climbing and shit. Like he's wild. He had like an old style like.
Man,
I might be misremembering.
I feel like I need to go to the gym after this conversation.
I'm like misremembering this maybe, but you remember the episode of Seinfeld where he has like the pirate shirt? You know, it's like the flowy kind of frilly. I swear I remember him having like kind of a Germanish version of that shirt on. And I'm like, dude comes in with just some big dick energy with his shirt on. Like, I'm just coming in wearing a flowy ass shirt and fuck with me. Like, it was just so, he's an inspiring dude. But I might also be just imagining this. He's like, he's taking on these mythic proportions in my head. But
woven from wool, he sheared himself, tied with leather straps from a hide he tanned his own.
Really, nothing would surprise me. He's just like, hey, he's a folk hero in my mind. So that's what I'm drinking. What do you got, Steve? You've been drinking all day because you were at Beer Fest.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't have any beer at the moment. I'm on the come down off a homebrew festival, so I got 2 drinks. I have the Rebel Hard Coffee Bourbon Caramel Latte.
That sounds like so much.
Super good.
It's honestly not that much.
Okay.
It's pretty just like a
lot
boozy,
of words.
Yeah, just like boozy caramel and coffee.
Nice.
And
sounds pretty good right now, actually.
Actually, it would not be too bad.
Those things are fucking addictive for me right now.
The hard coffees.
Yeah,
really?
Especially the Rebel ones. Yeah, they're so good and easy to drink.
I might have to get some. Are they carbonated? No, they're not carbonated, right?
No.
Where do you find them?
I was gonna say.
Eagle. I've been getting them Eagle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Give me the G.
Yeah. John Eagle.
Yeah, we went on what was it, on Saturday? My wife was on call. She had to go into work for a little bit, and I was with my oldest daughter, and my youngest was with her. She had to run into the office, and because they had sports and events all day, and I was like, where do you want to go for lunch? We were going to do like a little daddy-daughter lunch type of thing, and she wants to go to Panera. Yeah. She was like, I was like, what are you in the mood for? She goes, I would like cheese and fruit. I was like,
oh my
she's
God.
7. She's almost 7. I was like, okay, well, we could go to Giant Eagle and have like just a little lunch in the car. We'll go in and get like a hunk of cheese, some fruit or whatever. So that's exactly what we did. We went to the Giant Eagle.
You're prepping that charcuterie life. Yeah.
We went over to the cheese counter, got some sharp cheddar, got some apples, got some plums, got a big giant thing of strawberry lemonade, and just chugged it in the car. It was pretty good.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I love me a GE trip.
The other drink I have, though, is more interesting to this show. Sheetz Pumpkin Pie Pop.
Stop.
Oh, shit,
Stop.
bro. Oh,
no.
shit.
I'm not here for that.
I am. I am, brother.
I want to fight someone over this right now.
Dude, I will boil that down into a thick concentrate and mainline it. I don't give a fuck.
So, Brian, this is the perfect thing for you to take your candy corn red vines as a straw.
Oh my God.
Yes, fuck. I have like 2 of them. They're like kind of hard and crusty. I'm definitely keeping them as a straw for that.
Soften them up in the soda.
You just get new ones.
How do I not? No, I want it hard and crusty. Wait, what?
Ew.
Wait, so this is Sheetz exclusive?
Yeah.
Nice. How have I not heard about this? I feel like I'm out of the loop.
I don't know. Sheetz has been making pop like all since 2020,
you know what I'm
I think.
Gonna do?
What? How do I not know this?
Guys, I'm going to do a real asshole thing.
Yeah.
The next time I find it, I'm going to buy it, and then I'm going to shotgun it.
I thought you said I was going to buy out the whole store and dump it out down the drain, down the sewer.
That's the asshole thing.
I would love to see you do that.
No pumpkin pie pop for nobody.
That'd be a dream come true, Meg. Don't tempt me with a good time, Meg. I'm gonna, you know what, you motherfuckers? You know what I'm gonna fucking do? You know what I'm gonna fucking do?
I'm gonna take all your snacks.
I'm gonna buy it all, and then I'm gonna drink it. I'm gonna enjoy it. I'm gonna enjoy it right in your face. I would love for you to enjoy it.
What's gonna happen though? You know what's gonna happen is then I'm just gonna immediately vomit. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, you're going to projectile vomit and go into diabetic shock immediately.
I don't know what the color is that's going to come out on you, but...
I'm going to chase it with Necco wafers. That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, Christ. Yeah, you might as well just launch yourself into traffic. So what color is it? Is it like a cola colored, Steve? It's hard to see.
It's a weird kind of almost tamarind orange.
Oh, yeah. Now I see it. Oh, man. I might have to just go straight to Sheetz after this is over and pour it over top of my Monster Mash cereal. I went as we went and got our cheese and our assorted fruits for our picnic in the car. I bought because they did not have Monster Mash, but they had the 70s retro boxes for Count Chocula, which I already got a Count Chocula, but Frankenberry, Boo Berry, and then they also had the Halloween Captain Crunch that turns the milk green.
That's
got
awesome.
me some of that. Got me some Bats Reese's Cup Syrup. My daughter and I are like, we are enablers to each other, so we just went and cleared out the aisle. We got Frankenberry and Boo Berry fruit roll-ups. We just filled the cart with absolute garbage. So
Nice.
That's where we're at right now. That's where I'm at in my life right now. That, and I went and just went kind of crazy at Spirit Halloween. I was posting about that earlier this week as well. But
yes, I saw the big giant wolf man.
oh, he's rad. Yeah, I think I posted I wanted to ask how much it was. Not that I was going to buy it, but I think also my kids would just shit themselves immediately.
You know, it'd be a really good Halloween costume this year is if someone went as Spirit Halloween. Like the store.
It's just like you have to have those Hot Topic like things that go over your arms. You know what I mean? They're like spider web looking things that go over your forearms that your thumb goes through. But then you also have, I mean, what else would be on somebody at Spirit Halloween?
You have a closing soon sign on you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have a 70% clearance sign the day after Halloween.
The way you really sell it is if you're at a party, every time somebody gets up from their seat, you take it.
That's the meta. That's the really meta approach to the Spirit Halloween. Yeah, as soon as you get up, you're like, you moved out. Sorry.
You moved out. There's empty space. Empty space, I take it.
That's so vicious.
Or you go as a tandem
vicious.
costume with a friend, and they're a Toys R Us, and every time they stand up, you sit down right where they were sitting.
That's performance art there.
That's so good.
Yeah.
That's
Now
so
it's a
good.
whole installation. Yeah, it's a whole art installation now.
Guys, this is going to be like our group costume. Like, we're all going to figure this out. You know what I would love to see it do? I want to see them take over a Pizza Hut. Because I want to see a Spirit Pizza Hut. Seriously.
Dude, the terrible, unspeakable things I would do for a Halloween themed set of those red plastic cups from Pizza Hut. Oh, I would do almost anything. I cut my right hand off.
Hey,
I love those cups so much.
Perfect segue into talking about Candyman.
That was completely unintentional. Or was it? So, any case, it's a great transition that we should probably start talking about this movie. I don't think we're going to go, scene by scene and really talk about this plot synopsis too much or anything like that. I would say this: there's going to be a lot of spoilers. So, if you have not seen it and you don't care, fine. If you're planning on seeing it, you don't want it spoiled. Just an FYI. I would say this though: for me, seeing the 1992 original Candyman probably within the last 6 months made a lot of difference for me, because if I wouldn't have saw that, and I was reading some reviews and listening to some little YouTube reviews and things like that of the movie just in the last couple of days since it came out, and people seem to be all over the place. I felt like they would be overwhelmingly positive, but they're kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
A lot of people are kind of I haven't heard anybody say it's trash. It's either they're super high on it or they're kind of lukewarm. Have you seen some trash reviews?
I saw one, and somebody gave it a half-star review.
All right,
I'm going to punch them in the face right now.
That's so. Listen. Spoiler alert here. I walked out of the theater on cloud 9. Absolutely loved the whole experience, and part of it was like coming out of theater for the first time in 18 months. So like, I'm definitely that guy who's easy to excite, who's easy to please, and I come out bebopping out of theater like, that's the greatest movie I ever saw, and I loved it. I really did enjoy it a lot. Sitting on it for 24 hours, I've softened just a little bit, but I still really, really dug it. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great movie. I didn't, but to give it a half a star, like, you're just being a shit.
Yeah.
I just don't think it's definitely, like, I think even when you walk away and even look at it, like, multiple days later, I don't think you could walk away being like, this is not a good movie.
I think a lot of people, like, anytime there's a movie that takes itself very seriously and has, like, very serious, heavy themes. I feel like that does make it polarizing, just automatically. So maybe that's why.
That was one of my big takeaways. I told you guys immediately when we got on the call. I'm like, I wanted to walk out of the fucking movie crying because of all the social commentary that existed in it.
Yeah.
So like, I can understand what you're saying when you talk about it being polarizing. That immediately you start talking about anything like that's like a social issue that we should address. Yeah, people are going to shit on it.
I had somebody message me when I even posted about like, hey, the snacks to go in and watch Candyman. Somebody responded to like a story on our Instagram account and was like, just saw it. It was incredible. Like literally was sitting in my car in the theater crying afterwards. Like I could see people having a very visceral response to this in both directions. So like, I get it, but...
Yeah, so just a little more context. So the person who did give it a half star, they were saying more along the lines of they were comparing it to the original and saying how the original doesn't do a lot of the social commentary as heavy-handed.
No.
And they were more harping on a lot of the cartoonishness of the tertiary characters, which I kind of agree with. But I still don't think it's a half-star movie. That's
it doesn't
crazy.
knock it off. There are things about this movie that again, 24 hours later, I've been thinking about for 24 hours and are sticking in my craw a little bit, but not enough to knock it down in any real significant way. Certainly not to half a star, for God's sakes.
Yeah, especially because there's so much other richness within the film as well.
Yeah.
Like you already mentioned the cinematography. That opening sequence is fucking amazing.
Jesus Christ, there was so much. I mean... if this doesn't get nominated for best cinematography, like I don't know what else is going on out there. Like I haven't seen a lot of new movies, and certainly in the theaters. But like this is like an award nominated level cinematography performance, I think, in my mind, or cinematography effort. It was really, really fantastic. Sound design was awesome. I thought the performance of the main actors, some of the tertiary actors were a little soft. There wasn't a lot. For us, they did a great job of making it feel really big, although despite the fact that it was a pretty small story, like in terms of like the scope and the amount of characters, but the main characters I thought did a great job.
Oh yeah. I think, but I wanted to make a point to talk about, like, I mean, now we're talking about movies that are referencing movies from like the 90s and like the 80s, like whatever we're talking about. It's kind of hard to make that comparison without just taking into context time and place. And I feel like, though, for time and place, like I liked how they basically took the original story and almost created this new narrative almost for it, and like it felt like it was almost like okay, we know the Candyman story, but now here is this slightly continuation of it, but also new story that we can build off of.
That's kind of the whole point of the story as well, is so whether you know this or not, the original Candyman is actually based on a Clive Barker short story.
Right.
And so the Clive Barker short story was set in London and completely different. And Clive Barker based that off the original urban legend of the people who like go parking at Lover's Lane and they find
the hook hand killer. Yeah.
The hook hand killer.
Yeah, I can see this.
So it's all adaptation and it's all advancement, like, changing the story just a little bit. Some details change, but overall it's still the same power of legend.
Yeah. Yeah. And they definitely leaned away. I could see somebody who was a fan of the original movie. And I mean, you got to remember, it was a trilogy, right? So there's a movie that came out in 92, 95, and 99. 92, I think a lot of people think very highly of that movie. The 95 and 99, not so much. I've personally never seen them. Today, I watched a little bit of the 95 one today.
Yeah.
But they are definitely held in way less regard than 92.
I like 2. I like 2.
2's the one, because 2 gives a lot of backstory, which that was the thing I liked about it. And Daniel Robitaille, he it kind of gives him first of all a name because he doesn't have a name in the first one, but then
I think he does. Yeah,
really?
Yeah.
I feel like until I saw the second one, I didn't know what his name was. But I'm not a huge fan of the first movie, but I like it. I appreciate it. But I've probably only seen the first movie twice. I remember seeing it in like.
I literally watched the first movie like after watching the one in the theater.
Really?
So I came home.
I wanted to. I just didn't have time.
I wanted to revisit it, but I've only seen it one other time, which,
I just watched it for the first time in probably a decade, maybe like 6 months ago. So it's kind of fresh in my mind. Like I did just see it not that long ago, but the time before that, I was a kid, right? So I've probably only seen it a couple times. But before we get too far into it, I guess the first thing we should probably call out is, so Jordan Peele's name's attached to this. It's not directed by Jordan Peele. It's directed by Nia Dacosta, who's got a lot of buzz right now, although I have not seen any of her other films. This is her first film that I've seen, and again, directorial, debut from my perspective, was pretty impressive. But Jordan Peele co-wrote this along with her and I think one other guy who I don't remember his name. And then I believe it was produced by Jordan Peele as well. So knowing anything about Jordan Peele's films, obviously Get Out and Us, there's going to be, he's not going to shy away from the social discourse and the social issues and certainly issues of race that were so, even though they weren't quite as straightforward in the first movie, they were a huge part of it still. I mean, the story of Daniel Robitaille, he was this an artist, a very kind of from a very well-to-do. His father was a farmer slave, but they had kind of pulled themselves, managed to pull themselves out of poverty, and his father was like a shoemaker or something.
His father built something that automated the making of shoes post Civil War. Yeah. So they got money, and then he was able to learn that he had like a painting ability.
Yes. So he was wealthy, grew up in, a pretty privileged environment in the sense that he got sent to all the best schools in London and all these sorts of things. So he was very much a gentleman, an English gentleman, obviously, but a little bit unorthodox, certainly in those times for an African father or son of a former slave, obviously to be in that scenario. But in any case, fell in love with a white woman who was the daughter of a wealthy landowner or something like that, or wealthy family. She got pregnant, and then the father basically hired essentially a lynch mob, right, to chase him down and then do all the things that resulted in some of the elements of the Candyman mythos, which was, tortured him, beat him, cut his hand off, inserted a meat hook into his arm, and then covered him in honey for all these bees to attack, and then eventually set him on fire, right?
I'm
as well.
I'm curious about even the historical context. Was that like a thing, or is that just like, oh, this sounds interesting for the story with the whole bee thing and honey? Because that almost like tar and feather type idea, but different.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to whether so we're getting a little bit ahead, but in the 2021 story, where they use this kind of, I thought, a really fantastic and entertaining and beautiful and clever, frankly, device to lay out exposition and storytelling, which was the shadow puppets.
Yeah, I like that a lot too.
They show, of course, the plight of and that scenario and the murder of Daniel Robitaille, but they also show a handful of other scenarios, a couple of which were true life ones, which is pretty, certainly. I think if somebody who didn't necessarily know the context behind, like one of the instances, especially if you hung around through the credit sequences at the end, and I know we have barely talked about the movie, now we're talking about the credit sequence, but
we'll just work backwards.
But I mean, it actually was really, that's why I walked out, like I could see somebody walking out very emotional from this movie, because that end credit sequence where they're acting all this out via these shadow puppets, and they have a guy who is dragged behind a pickup truck, you know what I mean, until he died. Like that literally happened within the last, I think, couple of decades. It was a big national story.
It's probably happened even more. But
and same thing with the kid, the 14-year-old who got executed via electric chair. Like that's a real story. Like so, I don't think the Daniel Robitaille one is, but I do think that they definitely played in that, like, could that have happened? And in all likelihood, did something like that happen in the history of our country? Yeah, probably.
I wanted to make a comment that, like, just so that we don't get too far away from it so I can make it. But, like, you've already talked about how great the cinematography was. But I feel like when they talked about the social commentary, is what I feel like they did a good job about is that they weren't they didn't like come out, and it didn't feel like in your face about like, oh yes, like, so we didn't like see, you know, riots or protests or anything happening, but like with the way they use cinematography and the timing of it all, I felt like was really, really good because, you know, opening scene where it was like there was no pause with like police. It was shit's happening, someone's trying to be like stop, and they're just like, boom, let's go. And so I feel like because all of this is really relevant for us and the things that we're experiencing, things that we're seeing, I felt like they did a good job making things seem very relevant in that way. And
they reframed a lot of the themes and frankly the Candyman mythos. They reframed it for a modern audience. And the one thing I'll say, and this is what because that's fucking hard to do, really hard. I mean, think about some of the remakes that didn't have big, heavy social issues involved in it, that still did a really bad job of modernizing, you know, a mythos of an existing franchise. To have to do that and still have to have the deft hand to take into account all of those social, socioeconomic, sociopolitical, all those elements, like that's fucking a task.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why I feel like they did it where they were able to do it with actually how they shot it and how they like, you know, that's why I thought was brilliant in that way.
And I think another thing, just to go back to like, so the original Candyman has a lot of that social stuff in it as well. It like basically the story is about a white woman who's invading a space that isn't hers.
Right.
And she's doing it for her own betterment. You know, she's trying to enrich her life by, you know, stealing, not necessarily stealing, but, you know, taking away from, you know, communities that are suffering. Yeah. You know, and she profits off of that. So then, you know, the modernization of that has to still maintain it. So that's why, you know, the remake of Freddy or the remake of Jason don't have to have those things.
Sure.
So you had to do it for this Candyman. You couldn't just put out a fucking weak ass slasher.
You can't go Child's Play with it and just go, it's a robot now. It's AI now. You know what I mean? Not that I actually thought that movie was fine, but you know what I mean? Yeah, it's not like now it's that, but with computers. Like they can't do that, right?
Yeah. But it's built in. It's already built in. So you have to continue that legacy in that way.
Yeah.
So. I even like I think the people, and maybe this has something to do with why I really, really dug this movie, and some people maybe aren't as into it. I feel like, and this is a bit of a leap, but I'm going to guess that the people who aren't crazy about the 2021 one are the ones who are also big fans of 92.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Because that's where I'm sitting, I think.
Yeah, and I like the 92 movie. Again, I've only seen it a couple of times. I do really enjoy it. I think some of the imagery is what stuck with me the most. And of course, Tony Todd. Like Tony Todd's performance as Candyman is an iconic villain performance. And you just, there's very few performances in horror history that are going to stand up to Tony Todd as Candyman in 92. But he is kind of the whole movie in my mind. And I feel like the character of, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but that character, I think her name's Helen, right? That's the white woman that I read it the last time I watched it, which again, only maybe 6 months ago. I remember reading it kind of as like, this hasn't really aged that gracefully because she's kind of this like white savior who, yes, she's coming in and using the kind of marginalization and cut off of communities. And obviously we're talking about Cabrini Greens and the fact that that's a real place and was a real place. And she's coming in and doing that. And they kind of like scold her for it. But in the end, she still is the savior who comes back and saves the baby, you know, Anthony and stuff.
Yeah, but like even within that end, she just becomes the new mythos. She becomes the new monster.
That's the other confusing part too. I'm still actually very confused about that, and that's one of the issues I had with this, with the 2021 version, is like it muddied the waters of the mythos of what the Candyman entity is in a very big way, because like in the first film, he's this boogeyman that is like an amalgamation of several different urban legends, like Steve, that you kind of talked about, who's really there to like how do I put this? He's kind of there to like hold up a mirror.
He's a scapegoat. He's also a scapegoat.
Yeah.
People use him as a blame for why they live in the situation that they do.
That's true too, which is another element that I feel like didn't age really particularly well. But he is definitely this like mirror that is held up to the society and some of the like social, racial, socioeconomic kind of paradoxes of the society, I guess is a way to make a very complicated theme in a sentence. But in this movie, he emerges as almost like this pseudo anti-hero.
Yeah.
Or at least in Anthony's incarnation.
But when you talked about like her being that like the hero, like in the first one, but I feel like that's where this movie took what happened then. And I think there's always about social commentary in some way, shape, or form. I have like a note about, I had a local artist, because I think that's where they were able to switch things for this film, was that they were able to put in our face and recognize, and I've had actual artists here talk about how like you want to promote artists and you want to push them and you want to like have them flourish, but you also use them as this device for that gentrification. And I feel like that's how they were able to switch it away from being like this woman's this like hero to no, actually Candyman's kind of this fucking anti-hero type character. Like,
but they also put some of the blame on, because that was a theme in the first movie, although it was much more subtle. And I wonder whether at the time, seeing it through the scope of 1992, whether it would have been something people even talked about. Whereas now watching it through the lens of 2021, the 92 movie, you start to see that like, not gentrification, but like, trying to be this like the white savior kind of thing or whatever. Whereas in 2021, they took that head on. So like, it's one of those things where they took some themes that became relevant over time, almost by, I don't want to say happenstance, but just the development of what has happened over the last, 30 years.
Yeah, like what we're comfortable talking about.
Yeah, so to go like, they're almost making the first movie feel more relevant and more complex in comparison. You know what I mean? Because they're kind of squeezing out of it some stuff that maybe at the time people wouldn't have got, or maybe wasn't even there. You know what I mean? In the scripts or in the performance or in the intention of the filmmaker. So undoubtedly, this movie is going to make the 92 version, which again is a fantastic movie, a classic, but I think it has painted the 92 version in a better light than maybe it would have had if it was never remade or if there was never any other sequels. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
I don't know. That's maybe not neither here nor there, but like, I guess the thing to probably something we should clarify, right? In the first movie, we talked about, Daniel Robitaille and everything that happened to him, and he's murdered and he comes back and he is basically inciting some manner of control over this community over which his ashes were strewn, right?
Yeah.
Of Cabrini Green, which is this like housing project, affordable housing scenario where it was basically cut off from Chicago, from downtown Chicago, I think it's in like the near north side or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. And ultimately he kind of is this like boogeyman of this housing project, right? In the new movie, they kind of start to set up this mythos of there is an entity who was not the Candyman before and really took on the moniker of Candyman in the 70s because of another person in this line of people who have come to be the physical manifestation of this entity, which we are now calling Candyman. So it may be, I think... It's never explained, but I think it started with Daniel Robitaille. That's kind of what's suggested. Because especially at the end, again, we're way into spoiler alerts, but at the end, when Tony Todd's face kind of pops in for a moment, he is the embodiment still to a certain extent of the Candyman. So you're assuming he's the first one. And we come to learn, Anthony, who's this artist you guys talked about a little bit, who is basically capitalizing on this level of gentrification that's happening in this area because his girlfriend is a art curator, right? Kind of who comes from wealth. She comes from a wealthy family. Her father was an artist, and I thought that was going to go somewhere. It really didn't.
Yeah, I wish there was just a little bit more.
Yeah, because you waited to see is like, oh, is she? Because they suggested that her father died as a result of his art or of some sort.
They didn't suggest it. They showed him jumping out a window.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. I totally forgot about that.
Had a psychotic break. And shit
you know what? That was the interesting thing, though, about that is this was just me being maybe stupid at the time. Is I thought for a second that and maybe I wasn't paying attention or something like that, but I thought that was something that was happening in a flashback to the childhood of the William Burke character, the guy from the laundromat. So I was like, oh, I thought the kid. I just because remember he had like sisters and stuff. Yeah. So for some reason in my head at the time, I didn't make the connection that was Brianna or what was her Troy was her brother's name.
Troy was her brother. Yeah.
I thought that was. Because originally when you saw stuff from that, from the 70s, 80s or whatever, it was flashing back to William Burke, the guy from the laundromat. So I thought it was, but yeah, you're 100% right. So he committed suicide. He was like a tortured artist type of person. And of course, Daniel was a tortured artist. Yeah. Anthony's a tortured artist. I just thought that we were going to get some sort of connection that never really happened there. But
I also thought they were going to add like a little bit more, or I wish they just had like one more scene. Because Brianna has an interesting character of like, it seems like she's always been in affluence. So she's like if they just had like a scene of her being adopted or something by like, a wealthy family. Because the jump doesn't make a lot of sense of father commits suicide but she's also a wealthy art curator.
They said something when they were in Troy's apartment about how he became like posthumously famous. Okay. So I don't think he became very famous and his art didn't really pick up until after he was dead.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I took.
You could get the vibe in general. It was through her and her brother talking about his entire collection too. That like, so I mean, I think like thinking about if they're sitting on all this art that like he was trying to push her to do something with the art, and she's just like no, like and so I mean, I feel like you kind of start understanding and putting stories around what the situation is that maybe because they had a family member who was in the art community and she was kind of following in those footsteps or reliving her childhood in a way, in a different.
I took it as the mother ran with the art thing, and maybe his father was her father. Brianna's and Troy's father was a tortured artist. The mother was kind of the brains of the operation, kind of like Brianna is with Anthony. So that's why she's in this relationship with Anthony, because she's trying to fix Anthony because she couldn't fix her father.
I think it's both. I think it's all like, and that's why I was kind of surprised that I feel like, and maybe I'm getting ahead, but I almost feel like the movie is setting up for something else, that maybe surrounds her. But I feel like you learn a lot about her, but not till like the end,
right?
And
I think it's just the entirety of both her and Anthony. They're obviously the strongest characters, thank God, because they're the main characters. But the whole point of the movie, all throughout, is about like the duality of a person's nature, and so we can talk about more when we get to the ending, but Brianna has this nature of like, she's always been in touch with affluence. She's never she's not like Anthony. Anthony comes from a lower income class and has moved his way in, but it seems like Brianna has always been somewhat safe.
It feels that she can move in that space more fluidly or belongs there to a certain extent, whereas Anthony feels very uncomfortable and in that scenario and doesn't know how to speak the language of those people the way she does.
And I feel like their dynamic, though, is very clear, because clearly she came from someone who also was like an artist, but then they play it off the entire time like he is kind of just like riding coattails.
Yeah. Or he's just like raw talent. That's hard. Yeah, he's not sure how to harness.
At one point, like he was references that, and I was like, okay, that's kind of a cool reference in general, but that's
But you kind of come to learn. So Anthony catches wind of so Troy actually kind of introduces them to the idea of Cabrini Green, and he really tells a very abbreviated, kind of misguided representation of the story, really just around Helen and what she did.
Well, like I said, Helen became the new mythos, and Troy picks it up by retelling the Helen mythos, not Candyman.
Yes. Right, exactly. And so Anthony knows, this is how Anthony learns, and Anthony feels a connection to this. We find out later why, but he finds a connection to this. He eventually goes back and starts snooping around Cabrini Green, taking pictures, and starts to get inspired by this idea of the Candyman. He runs into a guy who potentially still lives near or in Cabrini Green, although it has now been blocked off, it has been boarded up, and it is getting ready to be basically bulldozed, I think, or gentrified, turned into new, probably luxury high-rise apartments kind of thing, which I, out of curiosity today, Googled, and that is literally actively happening in real life right now. I think like 4 to 6 months ago, like the Chicago, city, bureaucrats in the city of Chicago approved like an additional like $600 million to finish the former Cabrini Greens redevelopment project, like in real life right now, which is pretty wild.
Wow.
But they have already, I think, bulldozed all the housing or whatever. So I don't know exactly where they shot that. Maybe they shot it before it did. I don't know if they shot it actually in Cabrini Greens, but he's snooping around. He runs into a guy named William Burke, and William is the kind of lore keeper, if you will. And he explains his connection to the Candyman of his childhood in Cabrini Greens, which is a guy named, his name has escaped me right now. I want to say
Sherman.
Spencer, but I know it's not Spencer.
It's Sherman.
Yeah, so Sherman was a guy which coincidentally also had a hook for a hand. That was what I was kind of...
I think it was somewhat alluded to in the shadow play at the end during the credits, and I think he lost his hand at a candy factory.
Oh, missed that.
Yeah, I think
that's... Is this where Willy Wonka comes into play?
Yeah, this is where the cinematic universe of Willy Wonka comes into play, because Augustus Gloop got sucked up the tube, and then they went on the boat, and then they went into the other room, and when Grandpa Joe and Charlie go up to the ceiling with the fan, that's where that guy lost his hand. No, I don't know. I'm just making shit up.
The other way it might, and it's a loose connection, but in the first Candyman film, there's a tale of Candyman going around, and the kids know it as there's this kid who got attacked in a bathroom. Yeah. And he wasn't killed. He was
castrated.
He was castrated, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, it was something brutal like that.
Which may be like an exaggeration or a twist, but maybe that was Sherman that was in the bathroom and he actually lost his hand, not being castrated.
Yeah, so could be. That's a great point.
Because it looks like it's the 60s, early 70s. So like Sherman looks to be mid 20s or so, or mid 30s. So I don't know.
Sherman, I felt like he was older than that. I feel like he maybe was 40s, 50s. I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, Sherman is definitely not Daniel Robitaille. Daniel Robitaille was like a bit of a... He was a dandy, if you will. Like he was very, educated, well-dressed, very sophisticated gentleman about town. And Sherman seemed to have struggled with some degree of mental illness, maybe. He kind of just... They describe him as like a guy who stood out, just kind of talking to himself or kind of carrying on, and everyone thought to be harmless and was, would hand out candy to the kids. Well, William Burke, as a kid, saw, Sherman emerge from the wall, not unlike the Candyman, mythos in the first movie, which was again, a real thing that happened in real life where this urban legend was taken from, but it actually was a person who gained access to a woman's apartment and murdered them through a hole in the wall behind like a vanity or something, which is pretty creepy. But in any case, she he comes out of the wall, young, maybe 10-year-old, 11-year-old William screams. The cops hear him because the cops are just hanging around, Cabrini Green, you know what I mean? And come in and just beat the guy to death because there was a report of candy with a razor blade in it. and they had been kind of looking for this guy, right? From what I understand, he comes out, gives him a piece of candy. He screams, they come in, and he realizes that the guy really didn't mean any harm, and ultimately he's murdered by the police.
Happy motherfucking cops.
They come in.
Guns. They
beat him to death.
Yeah, no, they're straight up. You hear the screams, and it was like torturous.
Yeah, it was a pretty brutal scene, because then they're like, yeah, and then nothing changed. Like there's more people found candy with razor blades in. So the guy was obviously, I mean, again, the guy was undoubtedly making people feel uncomfortable around their kids and all that sort of thing. So that was part of it. But like he by no means did he deserve to have any violence done on him, let alone be beat to death by the police. But so he becomes the Candyman of Cabrini Greens in the, I don't know, 70s, 80s or something like that. And that's where the thing that I find really, really interesting, and where the mythos kind of really becomes, I think, really a lot more rich in this version, is it feels like the Candyman, and it has come to be named the Candyman in whatever the 70s, 80s. Daniel Robitaille wouldn't have been called the Candyman because he had no connection to the candy or anything. So he was just whatever the entity is this kind of like rolling snowball, if you will, throughout history that picks up elements, because of course the hook is part of Daniel Robitaille. The bees are part of the story and plight and tragedy of Daniel Robitaille. But then the coat, it gets taken by Spencer. The candy element, not Spencer. I keep saying Spencer. It's Sherman. I just made up a new name for the guy. The candy, all that stuff, it comes from Sherman. And then, of course, you can't help but wonder what Anthony's contribution of it is, and there were obviously others, because at the end in the shadow puppet sequence, you see there's at least 2 or 3 others, right?
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that's what gave it away. That I feel like this is like a bigger story of like this continuation, which it makes me really excited to see like what they could do with this next version of Candyman, and I think like could be a really cool continuation.
I also think. I think the candy and the razor blades also calls back to the original Clive Barker short story.
See, I've never read the story. What's it called? It's called
The Forbidden.
The Forbidden. Yeah, I've never read it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where that starts at. So, I mean, if you want to look at it as a continuous story all throughout,
we should post like a link to like on our page, because I'm curious about. I want to like look over it and stuff like that. But it'd be cool to like share with everyone else.
So the one thing I really hated about the way they promoted this movie, and a lot of movies nowadays, I actively try to avoid trailers now because they give so much up. But I did, at some point, for whatever reason, saw at least a portion of the trailer of this movie, and they really gave away. And I get it, if you knew the last name of the mother whose baby was taken by the Candyman in the first movie that Helen ultimately saves, her last name is McCoy, and it's Anthony McCoy. So you kind of knew that you probably would have been able to figure out that Anthony is the baby, right, from the first movie. Unless you had never seen the first movie, you probably would have been able to figure that out. But I do really hate the fact that they basically showed that Anthony is the new Candyman. But I like that you've learned that he's not the new Candyman, he's just another Candyman.
Yeah.
So that was a nice little twist, even though the freaking trailer
blew it for you.
Ruined that part of it. I hate that. I hate modern trailers so much.
Also, here's 3 seconds of the trailer you're about to watch. I'm watching it. What are you doing? Don't show me exciting parts. I'm going to watch the whole thing.
And especially I'm so mad about the trailer for Halloween Kills. That's for another episode. But it shows literally what looked to be significant characters dying, and it's just it's very frustrating. But so Anthony is just kind of the current incarnation of this long line of kind of vengeful ghost entities, if you will, that pick up elements of these, victims of specifically racially motivated hate crimes, racial injustice, murders, in all cases, I guess. But now that this brings me to a couple of questions and how it ties into the first one. And this is, again, I will reiterate, this is a tall order, right, to tie it into that complicated mythos with all the social elements to it and racial elements and all that stuff. Is where does Helen fit into this from the first movie? Because she seemed to get the Candyman treatment at the end of the first movie, right, which really took a lot away from it for me. Yeah.
So within the first movie, Helen is just a student researcher, and she's just working on urban legend overall. And she has a partner with her, and the two of them are working on urban legend, and they just kind of happen to stumble on this Candyman mythos, and it's because it's simple, just like she's in the room working on something, and somebody's talking about Candyman on a tape recorder, and the person who the lady who's cleaning the classroom overhears it, and she happens to live with somebody who lived in Cabrini Green, or she's working with somebody who lives at Cabrini Green, and was she knows about a murder that happened at Cabrini Green. And so that's when Helen and her research partner start going into the space, and they start investigating. That's where they meet Anne. And then at the very end, there is a reference to, there's a mural that's painted in Candyman's like space, that's like in this, liminal space within the walls of Cabrini Green,
where she walked. Yep.
So there's a mural painted of kind of like or a couple murals even, of like the story of Daniel Robitaille, and it's alluded to that Helen is kind of a reincarnation of the woman that Daniel fell in love with that caused his murder.
That's right. You're right. Yeah. And I completely forgot about that element. Yeah. She is the daughter of the wealthy. So here, that leads me to the next question, I guess. Is Daniel and Helen predetermined to be these creatures or these entities, or embody them like Anthony was?
Possibly.
Because Anthony was obviously chosen.
Right.
Like he was chosen as a baby. You remember this one like kind of iconic scene with Tony Todd with the hook, and he like is feeding the kid honey and stuff in the first movie. And you come to learn, of course, he meets his mother, which he had kind of been avoiding, kind of thing in 2021 version. And she goes on to tell him that, no, you were born at the hospital. We lived in Cabrini Green, and you were the baby who was taken, and Helen saved you, and blah, blah, blah. So he obviously was chosen by the Candyman to be a spiritual successor in some capacity. Yeah. Was Helen chosen in that same way?
See, I don't know that.
But why else would she stop that? Like, why would she try to be actively stopping that from happening?
Why would Helen try to stop?
Wait, because if we're talking about Helen being almost reincarnation, and we have this baby, is this baby supposed to kind of represent the idea of like her?
That's how she died. She didn't get reincarnated until after that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about like in general, like any sort of like correlations between like the dynamics between everyone.
Gotcha.
So
you make a connection.
Yeah. So Candyman took the baby to entice Helen to be with him. He made her a promise that if she gave herself over to him, he would give the baby back. But then she never gives in. And then eventually she does. And I think in general, maybe the baby is just a representation of the baby that he lost, because the very end of the film is he's trying to keep Helen, the baby, and himself all within a bonfire, and have them all burn together. So we're basically
talking about that all of these continuations of Candyman are maybe in essence like that child that he kind of lost in because of this original woman that was involved, basically.
Yeah. So that's Daniel Robitaille's story. He's trying to right the injustice of losing his family. And then by doing that, he also increases the mythos because he extends the life, because that's what he runs on. He's kind of like Freddy in a way, in that he survives on the fear of others who are afraid of him in the story.
Yeah. But then he also specifically has the power or a motivation to murder people who aren't scared of him and dare say his name 5 times, kind of thing. So like, but then it's also a way to summon him simultaneously. That, and again, this is me not really knowing not knowing the first movie in and out, maybe, but like, I definitely have some confusion around. I think it's safe to say that even in the first movie, even somebody who's a fan of the first movie, there's a little bit up to interpretation, which is fine. Like I like that. I don't want everything spoon fed to me, but they obviously shift in the second movie for the Candyman entity to be an anti-hero or I don't want to say a savior, but obviously he was to
more of an
Brianna
avenger
in the final scene. Yeah, he's a vigilante, vengeful entity that's coming back as this kind of anti-hero. But then like that in the first movie, he was terrorizing the community. That I took it in the first movie as he was terrorizing the community of Cabrini Green because they didn't save him from what happened to him.
Yeah,
like that's what kind.
But
like in this movie, he's almost acting as like a vengeful entity to like protect from the police and everything.
And that was kind of Burke's doing of what he wanted the Candyman to become, because he says like now he's no longer going to terrorize us, because I mean there basically is no Cabrini Green anymore. So now, now it's time for the Candyman to go. He's released from the development. He's released from, the ghetto, essentially. They can't hold him in anymore.
Yeah, like telling the girlfriend to like tell everyone. I feel like that's almost like that indicator as well. That's a good point.
Yeah.
So there's kind of broadening the scope of Candyman, if you will. Yeah. But that was my other thing. So I'm a little bit, I'm unsure of, is what is the role of William Burke? Like, obviously he was the witness, and there is something involved with it. There needs to be a witness because he says Brianna is going to be the witness. Yeah. He was the witness to the 70s version of the Candyman. I would assume the wife... or they weren't, I don't think they're married, but the lover of Daniel Robitaille was the witness the first time, maybe. I don't know. But what is William Burke's role now? Is as the witness your role to like summon or manifest the new version of the Candyman?
Well, I don't know. One, he was just continuing it. But two, I think it's also, he was just guilty. Like, he felt his own guilt because it was his reaction.
He screamed,
it was his reaction that brought the cops, that killed Sherman. So I think he just wanted to keep the mythos alive, and was able to spread it out to everybody else because he just felt guilty what he did to that guy.
Because he murdered his sisters. Right? The Candyman ultimately murders William Burke's two sisters, or at least a sister and a friend of the sister. I don't know. One of them was obviously his sister.
Revenge too.
So that was the thing, is like, why does he feel a connection or a sense of duty or a sense of anything, any reason to help this entity when, yes, I get the guilt aspect or something like that, but then he murdered his sister. You know what I mean? So... and who knows what's going on in somebody's brain, through that amount of trauma.
Exactly.
There's a lot of different things you could say, but
he can't like control it, but he can unleash it on others. Rather than like what he caused part of it, but also it took from his family. But if he can just get it out of his life and into everybody else's, and make everybody else feel the pain that he did. Yeah.
No, that's great. That makes a lot more sense, because I was very confused walking out. That was the one thing that was like sticking in my craw a little bit, was what is happening with William Burke and what is his role and that sort of thing. So, because when he like obviously I know why he kidnaps Anthony, and I guess there's still a little bit of a question around the what do they call it? The witness kind of thing or whatever. But I guess he was the witness, so he just maybe assumes there needs to be someone else to take his place. I don't know.
If he'd already been hearing stories of the other Candyman, he just Candyman. I mean, I think they say Candyman.
The multiple Candymans is Candyman. Yeah, I get it.
So if he had already been hearing those tales, and he just figures this is my role now because it's part of me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. One of the things that I was like, so reading some reviews and stuff like that, like I said, there was a lot of questions, and these are the type of movie. It's like when we watched A Field in England, right? Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, A Field in England and another movie we talked about are now like got added to Shudder, coincidentally. Pretty interesting enough. But like, great example of that. Like, I like to have to think about and figure things out, about the movies. Not every movie. I mean, don't get me wrong. Do I? Is Head of the Family? Are you really thinking a whole lot about that one? No. There's a pun involved there with Myron and the brain and everything. But in any case, I'll let that. There are people listening just screaming jokes about brains. But in any case, I like having to kind of figure some of those things out and everything. But the one thing that reading some reviews afterwards, people were saying, and I would potentially agree to this. I do think the first movie is scarier. I think it's a more from a traditional kind of horror theme element. I think it does a better job with some of the horror themes. But I thought this, but then there was a lot of people who were just saying like, yeah, my main thing with it is just not scary. And I'm like, I disagree. I really thought there were some super effective, horror scenes here.
So I think, and honestly, it's possible people were just missing it, but the film is so visually dense. It's great. That's a good way of putting it. Let's jump to that one bathroom scene where he just shows up in the reflection of a hand towel holder. Yeah. And you'll miss it if you don't see it. But
there was 3 scenes like that.
He shows up in reflections all over the place. And I kind of want to watch it again to see if I can find more. But
same. Yeah. Cause that's what I thought too was was it the first time you saw it or the second time you saw it when it was in the reflection of Brianna and Anthony's apartment after he says it? And it's really vague.
I might have missed it. I might have missed it.
Yeah, so they're kind of playing around, flirting, wrestling kind of thing. And she says, "Hey, I, don't you say it? You know what I mean?" And he says it.
Yeah, I definitely missed it.
Yeah, they're not even talking. And the only thing you can really see, because the background of the room that the reflection is on is kind of dark, but you can very clearly see his coat. And it was really, really chilling. And then of course you see it later with him kind of popping out in the doorway at the critic's apartment, the film critic who invites after she shits all over him, then she invites him to her apartment.
Yeah.
But then I really like that. And this was actually one of the other kind of criticisms that I saw people having that was I just didn't get it. I don't want to say people. I saw one other podcast post something about there was the CGI sucked. And I was like, when are we talking about? I go CGI, and they specifically called out the scene that is kind of the zoom out rear window-esque scene from the apartment where the critic gets slapped up against the glass and then stretched across. Yeah. Maybe I don't see well, but I thought that scene was fucking great.
Nah, it didn't work for me.
It didn't look good?
I didn't think it was very good. Out of all of the kill scenes, I didn't think it was good, but it was okay, this is what you expect. I mean, it felt so she felt like a doll almost, I think, in my mind.
She had no weight. It was, she just moved too easily. It was that one, and then the other bad CGI that stuck out to me is in the first kind of killing. Where they're at the art gallery, where he cuts the movie screen, the bottom half that flops off. That was like a real bad blender.
It reminded me of like some of the early. It seemed like it belonged in like episode 1, like almost like Star Wars episode 1 a little bit. Yeah, I saw that. I did take note of the way it kind of flops down, but then I was kind of like, oh well, it was like this heavy reinforced fabric. Maybe that's how it worked because it was still connected in a part. I don't know. Yeah. I get what you said because I took note of that as well. Yeah, I would have to rewatch it because I did not feel like the scene in the apartment from the distance was as bad as people were saying it was. But maybe maybe it's from a distance and whatever. I need to rewatch it. It
definitely stuck out to me, but I liked the I liked the way they framed it and tried to do it. It's just
I feel like even like proportionally, I feel like maybe her size of her body, like you're like, this just doesn't seem right. But I do feel like the way like the slashings, I think made up for a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I had mixed feelings about one of the times I thought it worked really well. One of the times it didn't was like him, floating, the Candyman himself, kind of the floating kind of spirit element of him was I think one time felt like it worked really good and one time it didn't. Yeah. Here's the other thing that like I was honestly the most heart pounding, scary, tense horror element was at the very end when they're in Cabrini Green, and the cops are on their way and you hear them pull up, you hear the sirens coming, you see the lights start going, you're like, oh god, what's going to happen when they get in here? Because you care about these characters at that point. You're like, this is not going to go well, and she's yelling for help, and you're just like, oh, it was just that was a pretty chilling one. And then of course then the scene with the cop in the back of the car where he's railroading her, was even worse. So
those are all fucking great. Poignant things.
That ending, that one of those shots is probably one of my favorite shots, aside from that opening credit architectural scroll. But so the very opening shot, we get that shadow play with William Burke as a kid. He's doing cops and robbers shadow play. Then one of the last scenes you get is Anthony in Brianna's arms, William's on the ground, also dead, and all you see is the shadow of the cop against the wall, but it kind of goes over William Burke's body. So it's again like he orchestrated it because he's the one who called the cops. Sure. So it's very much like he did
set the whole thing in motion.
It's very much like he did his own shadow play the same way he did as a kid. I really like that.
They did a great job. There was another shadow thing that I thought was really impressive was when Anthony is in his painting full body like painting suit, and he's on his way. His things have deteriorated. It's actually after he's obviously went and saw his mother and all that stuff, and it was not long before all that stuff happened. And it's him walking down the street of Cabrini Green, and it's dim, and it's really like it's at like dusk, and it's very dim, but there's this like bright shining light on the downtown skyline, but Cabrini Green is in its shadow. And it's obviously there's some symbolism involved there. And then there's this flash from inside the one house, which he ultimately goes into. That was just the lighting was really, really impressive. Like to do it on that street scene like that had to be so hard to. I mean, I don't know how much of that you can do digitally. I don't know, but I thought that was a really impressive one. But yeah, a lot of really, really great, really beautiful shots. Lot of slow zooms, a lot of very confident, long hold, slow zooms of Anthony walking in downtown Chicago across the bridge, down by the Riverwalk area and stuff like that. Where I thought were pretty cool. But
a lot of great use of like making Chicago the city a character. Again, back to the cops. Aside from the police you see sitting in the car in the very, very opening, you really don't see their faces at all ever. They're either just like a car moving by or a shadow, or the detective at the very end. All you see is his eyes in the rear view window or the rear view mirror. Even the cops that showed up with him, they're all in tactical gear, so you never really see their faces. So they always have this.
That's interesting.
They have this real malevolent presence about them.
Very menacing. Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm glad you pointed that out.
I'm the only thing that I'm like, I'm a little torn on the character of Anthony a little bit, because he's like, they definitely seem to be suggesting, and this is one of those kind of loose ends that I don't really know. And maybe this is just me being ignorant, but I feel like I don't fully know what they were trying to get at with the idea of Anthony. Obviously he grew up in a much tougher situation than Brianna, and she's kind of like been almost this kind of, I don't want to say savior figure to him, but certainly sustaining him financially, as he kind of goes on this. So he is now living, and it was a theme throughout the movie, and it was first kind of brought up in kind of a intentionally pretentious way from the art critic, but it's this idea of like art's role in holding a mirror up to social issues, and I don't really know where the filmmaker comes out on that topic, like pro or against, because like you kind of get it set up where like the art critic of like, and other people even, whether it be the owner of the original gallery, or whether it even be the person who she's kind of, and she's an African American woman too, but she is kind of suggesting to Brianna that I don't necessarily want you for your talent, I want you for your story, because you look really good on paper. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because of all these reasons, these kind of social reasons, you look really good on paper right now. So it's this idea of like black people, well, a little bit, but it's almost putting the onus on black people a little bit to be like, why are you playing into these narratives for your own benefit? But then later on, it kind of reverses that role. So that's what I mean when I say I don't really know where the filmmaker is coming out on this, because you're kind of like, well, Anthony,
with his art show,
Anthony got out. Anthony's now doing all this from a position of privilege. He lives in a fucking $1 million apartment. Yeah. You know what I mean? All of a sudden now, and Brianna comes from money, and she's the one who's championing all this. And so I don't really know.
I feel like everything's so much more subtle, and I'm very curious to hear more interviews, because with like everything that we're talking about, but like his art show in general being called Say My Name, tying in the idea of Candyman with like very deliberate, we hear these words, like you see them plastered all over Pittsburgh anyway too, about like say their name. You go into East Liberty, you're like, there's a list of people there, like say their fucking name. So like you see all these different ties with that, whereas I kind of hear what you're saying, where then the art critic then comes out talking about it being like some sort of like different like reflection. But then you go deeper into the art community idea of it, where like they're almost perpetuating their own demise, but it's also almost a double standard where it's not just the art community, but like is something else going on there.
Yeah. They really lean into this idea of like, and I don't exactly know where they're putting the accountability. I think it's probably, it's just like some of these movies.
City. It's definitely the structure. You can definitely feel it all.
But they're also putting a lot on like the black community too, a little bit. I feel like
maybe to reflect. I don't think it's like a direct, like this is your fault or this is what you guys need to take responsibility for. I think it's a reflection of what can you do to change it by acknowledging how people are using you.
That's good.
Their vision.
Yeah. I'm not saying they're at fault for anything. I'm just saying like it's just an interesting way of, it feels like they're talking to different people at different points in the movie.
And it also,
I can understand.
Yeah, I think it just again calls to the duality of it, of like again, it's duality and reflection all through the film. But I mean, you look at Clive, the art gallery owner, and the critic, and it's obviously they're engaging in some sort of gatekeeping, because there's you know,
for sure.
But at the same time, it's like, is Anthony's art really that good, or is he just leeching on to something that he found as a way to, get recognition? Is it something that's really a part of his story? I mean, you find out that it is, because he absolutely was born in Cabrini Green. He lived there. It really is his life because he's tied to it completely. But they don't know that. He doesn't know that at the time. Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's why I almost thought it was like, I was almost getting to the point where I thought maybe it was one of those things where it was like, understand that you being successful in your career doesn't mean that you don't still carry the weight of these tragedies on you and on your lineage and on your communities. But so it's almost like this thing of like, it's an imposter syndrome. So don't fall victim to that kind of an imposter syndrome, because no matter what, there's still a double standard, and you're living it, whether you're coming out on top or not, you're still kind of living that. You're still living in that with that problem, with that issue, or with that burden, I guess is a better way of saying it. But
yeah, and it does come back to them at the end.
Because I feel like what I almost even liked about it was that they're giving this story that we've heard from like the white perspective all the time, like where like someone coming up and having this opportunity through privilege and whatnot, and that's kind of, I think, in a slight way that they're even showcasing there. I don't think it was the main point of it, but obviously everything we've talked about kind of plays into
one of my
as well.
favorite lines of the movie, which was played for laughs but really was like very poignant, was Troy, Brianna's brother, when his white boyfriend is trying to get him to do the summoning, say the Candyman 5 times, and he says, black people don't need to be summoning shit. To him, and it's like, because it was such a funny.
It was like, we are so
that was kind of the stereotype, but at the same time, they turn around and go like, look, he is inherently nervous about this, whether he's making a joke or not. And look at these privileged white girls in the bathroom doing it for fun. You know what I mean? Because they know that nothing they really do in life has any real repercussions. Whereas he goes, I don't think anything bad's going to happen, but why risk it? Because repercussions are a real fucking reality for me. You know what I mean? So it's just like I thought it was poignant, but obviously funny.
Can we all just say Candyman 5 times together before we end the show?
And then we all get murdered. I love it.
I know. How am I supposed to edit it?
The episode never comes out. No, man, Steve, you don't say it. You're
this
valuable,
will be the hidden
Steve.
track.
Okay.
We die.
Gotcha.
You live on to tell our tale.
Yeah, it's just Brian and I. Brian and I will go back and forth. We'll just say it 5 times.
In solidarity, I'll do it after I publish the show. But so there was another part, and I know I talked about my uncouth, awful, person in the theater. There was another person in the theater. It was an older black lady, and the scene where Brianna is investigating where Anthony is, and she goes to that laundromat that William owns. And she opens the door to the dark, dirty, scary basement, and then just closes it.
She's like, nope.
Yeah,
I ain't going.
She just nopes at it. The older black lady in the theater said, that's right.
She was like,
right.
Good call.
Oh my God, I'm so happy you had like a black person there, because I feel like even, oh my gosh, I want it. I want all the commentary. I want to hear it. Don't you do it! Don't you do it!
She was so happy and laughed about it,
because she was going to be real pissed if she actually went down there. She's gonna be like, nope, that's unrealistic.
It was such a funny part of levity, and then the lady just added to it by just yelling, "Yeah, that's right."
It was
fuck all that.
Yeah.
And then you heard the Yinzer snoring
over top. Snoring popcorn flying out of his nose. But yeah, it's the whole thing was just like it was very layered, and that's what I very much appreciated to it. The one kind of final thought that I kind of summarized this of was this idea, and this is kind of where I came to, because again, not being a huge, not that I'm not a fan of it, but just not being as knowledgeable about this franchise, I was very confused about like what Daniel Robitaille's character was and how they kind of transitioned into the new incarnation of Candyman. And I think the one thing they kind of very much have in common, and what is the through line between them both, is this idea of, what society does to these victims. You know what I mean? The victims that ultimately become the entity that is Candyman, is kind of they make them what they are. So it's kind of like this self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's obviously a metaphor for the Cabrini Greens community and underserved and isolated and purposefully cut off communities, whether they be Black communities or whatever. Is this idea of like, you're marginalizing these communities by cutting them off, so they end up imploding on themselves. But it's because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because that happens to these communities, but it's because that they are cut off in these sometimes subtle ways. You know what I mean? Which was obviously the big takeaway for me, and obviously was made for obviously a very heavy feeling walking out of the theater. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Is it a perfect movie? No. But a really great spiritual sequel to the original. It really kind of, I don't want to say it retcons 2 and 3 out, but it kind of does. It just they're just kind of inconsequential in the scope of the full story, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Because 2 and 3, I mean, 2 takes it down to the South. So like that, like I don't think they get retconned because they just exist in a different space. It's no longer in Chicago. They're all
in Louisiana or something.
New Orleans. Yeah, it's all New Orleans, and getting to learn more about Daniel Robitaille himself. Whereas they even say it like in this one that we just stopped saying Candyman. We didn't say it anymore after that. But it, obviously that story traveled anyway. It traveled down to the South. It travels elsewhere. And it just has its own power as it moves about the people. But yeah, I think this, you said it earlier, Brian, that this one enhances the first one, which I think is true. But I think you definitely have to see them both, because they should have just called this Candyman 4 and just been honest and say it was a sequel.
Yeah, they kind of made it seem like they were doing what 2018 Halloween did, where they just retconned into after the events of 1 kind of thing. But it's really, there's not a lot that needs to be cut out, like you said. But one other thing I'll add. And I didn't think about this until this movie did it so effectively, because I really thought, her, holding Anthony in the building at Cabrini Greens as the sirens are pulling up and stuff like that was just like, super anxiety inducing. You don't realize in horror movies, because I just rewatched Scream not that long ago, and there's a million other ones like that. Like, you don't realize how many horror and even like action thriller movies where you think of the cops as a safety net. And when you take that out, even if they never come, even if it's because it's always like there's a mass killer.
Well, they're usually the first ones killed.
Yeah, and the mass killer is coming, and we just got to get to a phone so we can call the cops, and then everyone's going to be safe. Like, the chilling realization that no one is coming to help was a real. Me obviously coming from a place of privilege wouldn't, you know what I mean? That's just not something that's in my everyday life. That realization. During that last sequence was pretty intense.
Yeah, because they had already set up earlier. I mean, with the Sherman being beat to death. That, I mean, they start out and it has kind of that feeling that, oh, it's the 70s and cops are the good guys. But then they twist it, and the cops are villains. They're a malevolent force, and that way at the very end, like you're saying,
narrative and shit.
Yeah, like, oh, this is not a good thing that the cops are coming.
Yeah. Do you think they'll do another one? I haven't heard anything about it.
I'm going to end it without adding any more comments, but more so asking you guys, do you think there's going to be another one after this? Do you think they're going to try to do it based on that ending?
They could.
I think they could. I think they the director, she is going on to direct a Marvel movie next. She's doing and I don't know anything about the Marvel universe, but the Nia Dacosta, she's going to the Marvels. Yeah, she's directing a huge budget Marvel movie. So I hope we get her back in the horror genre, because this was I thought it was great. And
I am curious. I'm gonna probably check out a couple of other films, like just because I see Ghost Tape, and then Littlewoods also in her repertoire.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm not familiar with either, but I would be more than open to seeing something else from her. But
so I just wanted to, since we're at the ending, I just kind of wanted to bring back to Brianna, the character, and kind of the ending, which is tied to this whole duality theme we've been talking about. Like, William has been doing things because he's guilty but also wants vengeance. Anthony does things because he wants fame but also wants to be a representative of his community. And then we have Brianna, who's now trapped in the back of a police car, and they're basically telling her, hey, we're going to put this on you as well. We're going to put these murders on you with Anthony. And that's when she decides to call forth Candyman. And it's like, does she do it for the justice part of it? Or does she do it because she got caught and she was in trouble? Like, because she finally fell out of her affluence. Yeah. She fell out of her safety net.
I honestly... But I feel like it wasn't even as much of like she fell out of it and she was like, oh my God, I'm just like everyone else. But I feel like it was more so recognition is that no matter what position I have or how much power I have as a Black woman, I'm still always going to be that person that the cops try to.
You can always be wrong. It's just the fact that the color of her skin is going to make her susceptible to a wrong place, wrong time situation. Yeah, I took...
Right. Yeah, like they could put anything on her and she will fucking be wrong, and that's what I took
it as like a righteous indignation type thing. That's a hard word to say. That's how I took it, as like I have this trump card that I can play, and you know what? Fuck it. That's how I took it.
Fair enough.
But I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that was the way I took it.
No, because I think you can just look at it both ways. That's kind of the point of, most of the film is that, like, everybody... We talked about head of the family, how nobody's likable, everybody's a shitbird. But I mean, this film, aside from, like, some of the tertiary cartoon characters, like Haley and her white friends getting killed in the bathroom, they're just there to get killed. The art gallery, but Brianna and Anthony and William, they all have like a complex duality to them. That I keep saying that word over and over.
No, it is. It's not clear cut. Yeah. And I think it's also speaks to the villain. You know what I mean? It speaks to the Candyman entity. There's that he's an anti-hero in this scenario, but he also kills innocent people and also has this ego tied up in perpetuating his mythos and all this stuff. So it's
I feel like we needed that complex duality like you were talking about, like, though, to make them feel completely real to us and make us understand. And I mean, we're obviously three white people watching this and critiquing it. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that everything they did made it perfectly applicable for us to be able to walk away and understand what they're experiencing.
Yeah, I'm usually not, unless we're watching, Night of the Demons or something. I'd rather, which again I love too, but it's a totally different experience. You know what I mean? And like I think that I think the people, going back to us, talking about how people had different viewpoints on this and stuff like that. I think it's also partly like what you want to get out of the movie a little bit. And there's a lot to take out of this movie if you are open to the experience. But if you walked in wanting, zombievers, you're obviously not getting it. If you were like, I just want to go to the movie and see a horror flick tonight. Yeah, this is a pretty heavy movie. But it.
Yeah.
How do you not expect that with Jordan Peele's name attached to it, though? You know what I mean? Right. So
I feel like, you have to understand it and expect it because he's doing it because we need to see it. We have to. Well, and I'm sure people said the same shit
about, although it was maybe a little bit more veiled, but George Romero and John Carpenter and they all have pretty strong social and socioeconomic and political leaning messages. I mean, I'm sure the first time somebody went to some shitty theater somewhere and we're like gonna go see They Live, and they were like, man, it was pretty political. You know what I mean? I'm sure people said that as well about that.
I mean, you can date that even back to like the 50s with the Blob and different invasion movies. All of that was
Creature from the Black Lagoon, even. You know what I mean? Like that.
That was all Red Scare propaganda. Yeah. So like, I mean, it doesn't hold up anymore, but it always carries a social weight. Like horror films and sci-fi always are the best ones, always carry a social weight to them.
I wonder if the legacy of Jordan Peele, certainly because he's a few movies in, and I know he didn't direct this, but Nia Dacosta and people who are doing stories now that are so topical and are a little, I don't want to say they're on the nose, because that sounds kind of derogatory, and I don't mean it that way, but like I can't imagine a situation even 100 years from now where you could watch this movie and not see the blatant racial and socioeconomic and social themes. Like they're so at the forefront. Whereas like I think a lot of people now would watch, Night of the Living Dead even and could miss it. Certainly Creature from the Black Lagoon or something like that is another example, one we just said, but like they're more subtle, so they could be lost. This could never be lost. Yeah. I mean, maybe this is just me ignorant in 2021, not realizing how the world's going to change 100 years from now. But you know what I mean? Like, I just can't imagine a scenario where this isn't as charged as it is.
Yeah, but I mean, what you're saying is like this film and the original, they both come loaded with context. So those things don't get lost. Like if somebody who was young and wasn't around in the 90s watched the original Candyman now, they're still going to get the social context of people who had to live in these awful conditions, that were like guarded by gangs, that people were doing drug deals on the street, that like just kept things dangerous for the people who were trying to make it out. It gives them context, and it also, this film will give context to people in the future. If there's however it turns out. But if you reach true equality and equity, you can still come back to this film, and then people who are born 50 years from now will still be able to look at this and get historical context from it. Yeah. So it seems on the nose for us because we're living it and we understand it. Yeah. But it helps people in the future.
Good point. So. Well said.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Any other final thoughts? I think we all felt pretty similar on it. We all really enjoyed it.
I almost feel like when I walked out of the movie, and I think I want to cry, but it's okay. It's good. It's good. I'm glad we talked about it. I'm glad we saw it. I seriously, no matter what you can take away from this movie, everyone needs to.
It's a great one. I think it was really well told story.
Go watch the original.
Yeah, watch the original. I think it'll give it more context for sure. I'm glad I did not that long ago.
It's such a good continuation between the two.
It's really impressive.
And writing. It gives you,
Yep. Well, so to get on to a less heavy topic, perhaps next week, boys and ghouls, the belt's on the line. The belt's on the line next week.
Oh my God.
In our next showdown episode, in the first full week of September, we've got modern slashers. As a reminder, we've got modern slashers, 2000 to present, and the movies you want to watch if you haven't already. I am doing Hush from, I think, 2016. Yeah, 2016. Meg, the remake of Maniac, which was from what year do you remember? It's the remake.
2012.
She sounds like the 14,
2012,
2013.
Maniac.
Okay, wow. Yeah. Real good, guys. I knew it was like the range here.
And Steve is doing the remake of The Town That Dreaded Sundown from what year? 2014, 2012, 2014, 2016. 2 years apart every time. So if you haven't already, and you care to, go check those movies out, because we are going to I went on Amazon Prime ready. And I said, how much is a 20
Stone Cold Steve Austin right now.
£20 sack of tax cost? because we're having no holds barred.
No, we need a cage match. Can we?
We're electrifying the ropes.
Can we actually have?
It's Hell in a Cell but the cell's electrified. That's what's happening.
You know what I want is I want this to all turn into like seasonal SummerSlam. And then we have the ultimate.
Fast forward a year from now, we have full pay-per-views,
so
pyrotechnics, entry music.
It'll all be on Twitch, though. That's pretty much where it'll be.
We all get our entry music. I mean, it's got to be happening at a Spirit Halloween in October. That's got to be our WrestleMania series.
Yeah, kicking the door in.
Yes. Our WrestleMania is always on a Spirit.
I want to walk in. I mean, when I walk into a Spirit Halloween, I do generally kick the door open and say, "Oh, you want to know? Your ass better call." So I do that. I just do an entry music. I just feel it's appropriate when you walk into a Spirit Halloween.
You think you're funny with your red vine candy corn? What?
I do. I do a DX. So I just walk up and the people at the register go, "Hey, Brian, what's up?" And I just very politely just do the X.
Let the staff know to suck it.
You do it so slowly.
I exit up real quick for
Here's
them.
your suck it.
But yes, it should be very, very fun. I'm excited. So once again, if you and also one other thing is we are fastly approaching, and let me bring up just out of curiosity, we are recording this on Sunday night right before it's going to release. Monday morning,
get the numbers,
and we are currently at, let's see, we are approaching 6,666 followers. We are exactly 30 followers away from that. We are 6,636. Frankly, by the time we wake up tomorrow morning, we may be at 6,666. So what we're going to do is a little giveaway to celebrate 6,666 followers on Instagrams. Once again, at Halloween is Forever on Instagram, but we also have Twitter, which is at Hallow Forever. We also have a Facebook page is at Halloween is Forever Halloween is Forever podcast, and then we have an email if you feel so inclined to send us one of them, which is Halloween is Forever pod at gmail.com. But to celebrate that 6,666 followers, we're gonna have a pretty cool giveaway, and Meg is working on something pretty rad, which we'll post about in the coming weeks here, and it's no joke. It's a pretty sweet giveaway. So we'll talk about that. So follow us on there and keep an eye out for that. Go watch the movies we're going to talk about next week if you feel so inclined. And of course, we appreciate all the support and listens and nice things that you say on the social medias, as well as reviews on Apple and all those sorts of things. So thank you so much.
Yins are keeping
Thank
me
you so
alive.
much. It's pretty fantastic. And as we get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the spooky season, we are going to
Don't say that.
genuinely hated that. Do you know what that movie? That's a movie reference, by the way. Deeper and deeper. I'll give you a hint. Someone is being hypnotized.
It's not Get Out.
No.
Do they? I mean, they
do, but it's not from Get Out. I'm going to let you guys marinate in that one for a while. Deeper.
Okay.
Deeper and deeper.
It's not Hush.
No, it's not Hush. It's not a horror movie at all. It's a comedy.
Hey,
They'll
we'll
know what we're talking
They'll
about.
tell me, and I'll be like.
In any case, check us out on there and tune back in next week for our monthly showdown episode. Anything else before we sign off?
If you want to see me kick these two jabronis' asses next week, give me a hell yeah.
What did you say there? Nice pencil, drop him on his pencil neck. Well, give me a hell yeah. We should.
I feel like Steve is coming for us, and I am gonna fucking.
I've been playing mind games.
I am not ignoring you, Steve. I know you're there.
Games. I love it. I posted a thing. You guys may have saw it a while ago. It was on story where I bought a big skeleton. He's sitting on my chair right behind me, and he's got the belt over his shoulder. And I made it look like he was laughing. And I said, "This is me when Meg says she's going to take my belt." And here's how you got to deal with it, guys. Listen, Meg, see earmuffs real quick. So here's what you got to do. You got to get Meg all psyched up. Make her mad. But Steve, just pretend he isn't there. That's my theory. My theory is psych Meg out, and then pretend Steve isn't there. He's going to psych himself out. That's my theory. That's what I'm going for. All right, guys, you can take your earmuffs. You can
Steve, we're going to take an alliance here. Let's fucking go, bro. I'll fucking take one.
You are definitely walking a line, Brian.
But yes, this is my master plan. It's worked 2 months in a row. It's going to work a third month in a row, but we shall see.
He knows us too well. He's playing to my ego right now. I can feel that.
I do not like being ignored, so yes.
In any case, guys, we got a big showdown next week. Can Brian hold on to the belt for the third straight month? Does Meg reclaim her title?
Also, if we're going to be like meeting in person, you guys have already prepared me that you're trying to like destroy me with
ghost pepper snacks.
And you're ready. And I feel like that's not a fair fight. I think we need to do a snack skipper.
No,
look, I said I was going to bring some Carolina Reaper beer. I did run out of it at the homebrew event, so you're safe there. But it was a strategy to burn you out.
I've got a ghost,
just make you crazy.
I've got a ghost pepper I got a ghost pepper sausage because I thought, listen, it's September.
I don't step down from
September is practically Halloween. Mm-hmm. Ghost is spooky. Right. So it's spooky and spicy. So that's why I got the ghost pepper.
Spooky and spicy.
Spooky spicy.
That's a good combo.
So if we were starting a pop group, one of us would be spooky, one of us would be spicy, and I don't know.
Also would be spooky spice.
Can we decide this right now? Can we decide who's spooky,
You're spicy,
and what's
Steve
the third
is spooky,
option?
I'm stinky. I don't know.
Spicy.
In any case, let's wrap this thing up because I think we're at a 2.5 hour Minisode right now.
We're about 2 hours.
But this has been a lot of fun.
Yes.
We need to end on some levity after a very heavy movie.
It went from like super peak to
here's what we do, Meg. Here's what we do. Here's how we even it up. We eat crazy spicy stuff, but then also I have to eat mushrooms as well.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not doing it. I'll
bring him to the next recording, bro, man.
Any case, awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. Next week is when the rubber hits the road. Like I said, can I hold on to the belt for 3 straight months? Does Meg Meg recapture her belt from the first? Does Steve take his first sniff of the championship belt? Who knows? Only time will tell, but be sure to check in. All right. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, guys. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.